History is filled with monsters, but few wore the mask of a healer while committing the acts of a demon. In the darkest corners of human memory, he remains the ultimate phantom of terror. We are speaking, inevitably, of the man known as the Angel of Death, Josef Mengele. He was sworn by the Hippocratic Oath to protect life, yet he brought a cold, mechanical sadism to the destruction of it, targeting the most innocent victims of all, children. But before he was a monster. While two younger brothers eventually joined the family, Josef remained the clear favorite of his mother. He was a man. In this video from Winds of Thought, we dissect the twisted existence of Auschwitz's most infamous physician. Josef Mengele arrived in this world on March 16, 1911, in Günzburg, a quiet Bavarian town. He was the surviving eldest son of Karl and Walburga Mengele, born after his parents had suffered the loss of 3 previous pregnancies. His father ran a successful factory producing farm machinery, a business that would pivot to weapons manufacturing when the First World War ignited in 1914. Walburga was a physically imposing woman with a reputation for a short temper and an immense appetite, yet she showered her affection on Josef, creating a bond far stronger than the one he held with his distant father. For his part, young Josef was reserved, obsessed with appeasing his dominating mother. Academically, he was unexceptional, constantly fighting to meet Walburga's high standards. Then, at 15, tragedy nearly struck. He developed osteomyelitis, a severe bone marrow infection that was frequently deadly in that era. The illness forced him out of the classroom for 6 long months. When he finally returned, he was miles behind his classmates. However, over the following 2 years, Mengele displayed a terrifying level of resolve. He didn't just catch up, he eclipsed them. By 17, the shy boy had transformed into a sharp, ambitious young man, admired by peers and instructors alike. In April 1930, he cleared his exams and entered Munich University to study medicine and philosophy. He had chosen his path, he would become a doctor. On campus, Mengele was distinct. He dressed with precision, carried himself like an aristocrat, and treated women with a formal, antiquated chivalry. He was also an excellent dancer, a skill that ensured his social calendar remained full. But beneath the charm, a darker fascination was blooming. During his freshman year, Mengele drifted toward political extremism. In March 1931, he enlisted in the Steel Helmets, a paramilitary faction yearning for the return of the German monarchy. This group was merely a gateway to the National Socialist Party, which was gaining traction in beer halls and lecture theaters alike. The Nazis promised a restoration of national honor and the purging of impurities. These concepts resonated deeply with Mengele, intertwining with the distorted social Darwinism he absorbed in his classes. He became obsessed with eugenics, the theory that humanity could be perfected by breeding only those with desirable traits. Conversely, it mandated the removal of the weak. For the Nazis, however, waiting generations for selective breeding to work was too slow. They wanted to prune the garden of humanity immediately. They believed the Aryan bloodline was under siege by inferior groups like Slavs and Jews, whom they labeled Untermensch, or subhuman. Young Josef drank this ideology in like wine. In 1935, he earned his PhD in anthropology with a thesis analyzing racial differences in jaw structure. The paper itself was clinically detached, aiming to prove German superiority through cold, hard data. A year later, he secured his medical license. After a brief internship in Leipzig, he joined the staff of Dr. Ottmar Freiherr von Verschuer at the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene in Frankfurt. Here, Mengele's role was to inspect individuals suspected of violating racial laws, determining if they were Jewish. He compiled thousands of dossiers, paperwork that would later serve as death warrants when deportations to the camps began. In May 1937, Mengele officially joined the Nazi Party and the SS a year later. The SS, originally Hitler's bodyguards, was expanding to manage the concentration camp system under Heinrich Himmler. To Mengele, the SS represented the pinnacle of Aryan manhood. Around this time, he proposed to Irene Skonbein, a professor's daughter. She was young, blonde, and beautiful, the perfect aesthetic match. But there was a bureaucratic snag. While Josef could document his lineage, Irene lacked proof that her grandfather was purely Aryan. The marriage only proceeded due to the Mengele family's clout, But this gap in paperwork denied them entry into the SS kinship book, costing Mengele certain ceremonial honors. Regardless, shortly after their wedding, he was drafted for military training in the Tyrol Mountains, where his physical stamina helped him excel. When war erupted in 1939, Mengele was initially medically disqualified due to his childhood kidney issues. However, by June 1940, he was conscripted into the Waffen-SS. Initially assigned to a desk job in the Race and Settlement Office, the invasion of Russia in 1941 changed everything. The Eastern Front needed bodies. Mengele was deployed to combat, where he proved shockingly brave, earning the Iron Cross Second Class. By early 1942, serving as a field doctor with the Viking SS Division, he dragged 2 soldiers from a burning tank under fire, earning the Iron Cross First Class. But in late 1942, severe wounds removed him from the trenches. After recovering, he was promoted to captain and, in mid-1943, received an assignment that he viewed as the opportunity of a lifetime. He was appointed as a research physician at Auschwitz-Birkenau. For a true believer in eugenics, this was a laboratory without ethical limits. Here, he could test the most insane theories on living, breathing human beings. Mengele arrived on May 23, 1943. The very next day, he took his place on the ramp for his first selection. This ritual involved deciding who among the new arrivals would work and who would die. On that single day, he sent over 1,000 Romani people to the gas chambers. Unlike others who detested this duty, Mengele thrived on it. He stood in his pristine white medical tunic, gloves spotless, boots polished, flicking his wrist to signal life or death. His detached demeanor and constant whistling created a surreal, terrifying atmosphere for the exhausted prisoners. During his tenure, he presided over the selection of 74 separate train transports. Roughly 80% of these people were murdered immediately, including almost every child under 14 and the elderly. Mengele was heard remarking that the Jews entered through the door and left through the chimney. But his true passion was his science. He ordered guards to hunt for anyone with physical anomalies, giants, dwarves, or those with club feet. But his holy grail was twins. Since his university days, he believed twins held the key to unlocking genetic manipulation. To him, they weren't children, they were biological puzzles waiting to be taken apart. This obsession drove him to attend selections even when off duty. He collected nearly 1,500 sets of twins. Only about 100 pairs would survive him. These subjects were housed in separate barracks, surrounded by filth and death, yet they were initially treated differently. They had to fill out exhaustive questionnaires detailed their biology and heritage. Mengele wanted his work to appear legitimate, so he maintained a facade of professionalism. The children were bathed and dressed in clean clothes before being transported in Red Cross trucks to his labs. In the first lab, the approach was clinical. He would offer candy, speak softly, and play the role of a kind uncle to gain their trust. But this was merely the prelude to the nightmare. In the adjacent rooms, hell broke loose. Without anesthesia, he performed surgeries that defy imagination. Organs were removed, dyes were injected into living eyes to change their color, and limbs were amputated. He sterilized girls and castrated boys. He infected wounds with gangrene to study the progress of the rot. Sometimes, he conducted endurance tests, shocking children with high-voltage electricity until they fell into comas or died. Crucially, if one twin died, the other was immediately murdered with a chloroform injection to the heart to facilitate a simultaneous autopsy. Was there any scientific value to this? None. Colleagues later admitted the experiments seemed driven by pure sadism rather than any hypothesis. Beyond the labs, he would sometimes deliver babies for pregnant women, only to send both mother and newborn to the gas chambers hours later. In one instance, he taped a mother's breasts, forcing her to watch her infant starve. Perhaps his darkest moment involved a large fire pit dug near the crematorium. He ordered 300 children under the age of 5 to be tossed alive into the flames. Unlike many SS officers who needed alcohol to numb themselves to the carnage, Mengele was sober and enthusiastic. Survivors recalled his temper could snap instantly, once crushing a man's skull simply for asking to work near his son. He wielded absolute power, often accompanied by Irma Grease, a sadistic female guard. Together, they patrolled the camp like a perverse royal couple. Yet, despite his racial hatred, he was not immune to illicit desires. When a beautiful 15-year-old girl was brought before him, he was visibly aroused. Conflicted by his own ideology, he resolved the tension by mutilating her body on the operating table until she was unrecognizable, then leaving her to die. By 1944, he began a cycle of adopting a favorite child, usually a boy who resembled himself. He would dress the boy in a mini uniform, parade him around, and feed him sweets. A month later, bored of the toy, he would walk the child to the gas chamber himself. Ironically, the more brutal he became, the more his superiors praised him. Commandant Rudolf Höss noted Mengele's valuable contributions to science. But by January 1945, the Soviet army was closing in. Mengele knew the end was near. He packed his research notes and fled on January 17, just 10 days before liberation. The Russians found a ghost town of corpses and ruins. Mengele, meanwhile, drifted between camps before ditching his SS uniform for a regular infantry one. He was captured by the Americans but, incredibly, was released because he lacked the telltale SS blood group tattoo. He had slipped through the net. Paralyzed by fear of discovery, he worked as a farmhand in Bavaria for years. But as the full scope of his crimes became public knowledge, he realized Europe was a trap. In 1949, using a smuggling route, he crossed into Italy and sailed for Buenos Aires. In Argentina, under the protection of President Juan Perón, a sympathizer, Mengele felt secure. He built a prosperous life, working in construction and trading. His wealthy father even funded ski trips for him. His wife Irene had divorced him, but in a bizarre twist, Mengele charmed his deceased brother's widow, Martha. They married in 1958, and she moved to Argentina with her son. Living in a luxury suburb, often rubbing shoulders with Jewish neighbors who had no idea who he was, Mengele grew arrogant. He even reverted to using his real name. But the hunters were closing in. Hermann Langbein, a survivor, discovered divorce papers linking Mengele to Buenos Aires. West Germany issued an arrest warrant in 1959. Tipped off, Mengele fled to Paraguay, and later to Brazil, hiding with sympathetic families on isolated farms. As he aged, he became bitter and abusive toward his hosts. In 1964, a mock trial in Frankfurt exposed his crimes to the world, turning him into the most hated man in Germany. But by the 1970s, the trail had gone cold. He lived out his final years in misery, despised by the people sheltering him. In 1976, a stroke weakened him. Finally, in February 1979, while swimming at a beach in Bertioga, he suffered a massive stroke and drowned. He was buried under a false name, Wolfgang Gerhard. It wasn't until 1985 that his body was exhumed and identified, confirming the angel of death had escaped justice in this life. To his very last breath, he expressed zero remorse for the thousands of children he tortured. He lived a long life, but he died a prisoner of his own paranoia. If you found this deep dive into history compelling, please hit the like button and let us know in the comments what punishment would have been fitting for a man like this. This has been Winds of Thought. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the human condition. See you in the next one.